Howdo, welcome to King Bespoke Creations. Now then, I'm going to talk about dyes today, wood dyes more specifically. Quite often we might want to colour a piece of wood and we'll try and find the right dye to give us the colour that we want. I'm going to do things the other way around today. I have one dye colour. I was recently sent a care package from Nitorlack. It's a company that make a lot of finishes, dyes, lacquers, all that sort of stuff, even finishing stuff like sanding and buffing and compounds. And they sent me a little care package, including a blue dye. Now, what I'm going to do with that one dye is try it on many different types of woods to see what colour change might happen. It might stay exactly the same. I suspect it'll change a little bit because that base colour of the wood will be different. So let's take a look at the woods that we've got and see which one you think might be the best one. So here we are with our 6 different pieces of wood. Now I'm going to build a Gibson Les Paul style guitar. So with a blue top that we want, your standard maple top is what everybody goes for. So we've got some of this kind of as a standard really, but you don't always have to do what everyone else does. So let's see what else we might be able to use. As a similar colour but with a different grain pattern, we have this chunk of ash which could do nicely, and another colour match that might work similarly. This is basswood. Now basswood is a very common guitar wood, quite often put under a solid colour because usually it's a fairly boring wood. It's also though a carver's dream. It's one of my favourite woods when I do some nice deep intricate relief carving. So I definitely want to try it on there just to see what colours happen with that one. Down here, another common guitar wood is this mahogany, and then we have some church pew pine over there, which is rather gorgeous, and I've got a chunk of oak because, well, I love oak. So what I want you to do now is comment below which one of those 6 colours do you think is going to come out the best blue. Which one do you think it's going to be? Have a guess now. Now I've flattened all of these surfaces off with a random orbital sander up to 240 grit, so they're all nice and smooth and flat and should be pretty much scratch free. So let's see what this blue jean dye does on each of these colours. Okay, so let's start with the standard maple top that everybody seems to put on, which you can't argue, it's a beautiful wood. But there are other options. So let's just see, this can be our kind of base setting if you like. Now nice that this has a nice kind of pouring top on there so it doesn't just gush all over the place. We'll rub that in. There's a little bit of glue splurge in the middle. I didn't do this as particularly neat and tidy with the sanding as you would an actual guitar, but it should give us a pretty good idea of what that colour is going to look like. Here is our ash. Now I'm expecting the colour to go a lot darker inside those grain patterns, but maybe the excess, the flatter sections might be lighter. So this might actually give us a little bit more colour contrast. Oh, straight away there, look. Yeah, a lot darker inside those grains, a little bit lighter. I do love ash. One of my favourite woods, just because it gives you that instant grain pattern. Just look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. Right, next colour in that same lighter wood. The basswood, the carver's dream. Quite often, certainly in the UK, it would be known as lime wood as well. If you want to get your hands on some, it's also known as lime wood. The American version is basswood, and that's what generally guitars are made out of. So let's give this a splurge. I'm expecting a similar kind of colour, but maybe not as pretty grain-wise. But actually, there's a few flashes in there. So by the time that's evenly put on and dries out, I think there might be just a real faint graining going on in there. We'll have to see once that's done. And here's your next guitar staple, the mahogany wood. What does the blue look like with this red background? I'm expecting quite a different colour to come out on here. Let's just see. Well, still very definitely blue actually. It might dry a slightly different colour, soaking up quite a lot. Again, quite an open grain type of wood, so you should get a lot of pattern coming through. It's just making sure you've sucked it in enough. I think that's going to look rather nice. Yeah, well, that's like when it's dry. Now, if you've seen my channel before, you know I use quite a lot of church pew as a recycled material, and also something that looks rather gorgeous. So this is kind of a bit of a halfway house, I think, between the whiter woods, the maples and the ash and the mahogany, and it has quite a lovely grain patterning in there as well. So let's give this a splurge. Now, pines of any sort do have the grain in them is very, very contrasty between softwood and hardwood. So I'm expecting that to soak up in some grains and not soak up in other grains. So that should give us quite a decent contrast again once that's all dried up. And last but not least, a chunk of oak. Maybe not everybody's first choice. It is one of my first choices, especially when making necks. I absolutely love making a guitar neck out of oak. It feels fantastic, and it's oak. It's absolutely rock solid. So don't discount it as a wood that you might want to use in the future. But what does it look like under stain? I wouldn't know. I've never tried it. Here we go. And again, it's showing that grain pattern through. It's a little bit like the ash, to be honest, in that grain open poreness. So we'll see again once that dries what kind of colour we come out with. Time for a cup of tea while that dries off. And we're back. And here we are, fully dry. That is definitely a range in colours. Yes, they're all blue. I was almost expecting some of them to come out as some of them maybe a green, some of them maybe like more of a purple, but actually I think they have all stayed blue. So well done to Nitorlack for making a blue stain that comes out blue regardless of the wood that you're using it on. But there's definitely some different shades going on there. But that's not the final picture, is it? Because we don't leave pieces of wood, whatever we're making, in that state. We're going to put some kind of finish on there. Now, I often like an oil finish, a Danish oil especially. I've gone for the water-based stain here. They do an oil-based stain, I believe. But with a water-based stain, you can then put the oil on top and it's not going to affect the colouring. It's certainly not going to wash it off. However, on this occasion, I'm going to try out some of Nitorlack's spray can, rattle can, lacquer, gloss lacquer. Now, to get a nice shiny gloss finish, you do actually need to make sure that you use a little bit of grain filler on there as well. Otherwise, that shininess is going to go up and down inside those grains. Quick search on the internet. Should you use a wood grain filler before or after staining? Well, typically it goes, you can use wood grain filler before or after stains. How very useful. So let's flip these pieces of wood over and put the wood grain filler on first and see if that actually affects any colouring, as well as the process of how actually we're going to go about it. So we'll make sure that we've definitely got grain filler and dye, one order or the other, then we'll put the lacquer on the top. Okay, so here we are back with our original 6. We have our blue side on the other. Back to clean again. And then the wood grain filler. Well, we're talking about the grain filler and does it affect colouring? Well, do you know what? It might do, because this one is a natural colouring, grain filler itself. And then this one is specifically for mahogany. Now, I don't know whether they do any other coloured ones. I'm sure they do. It's also water-based, so you can thin it down as well and make it spread a little bit easier, depending on what you've got. So I suspect I'm going to use both of these today. Maybe this one on the lighter colourings and this one on the darker colourings. I think we'll go with something like that. Now it says to apply this with almost anything, to be honest. From scrape it on with a palette knife, through a polishing pad, or me, I'm going to go with my trusty kitchen roll because I use it for everything else. Right, let's try the maple first. Is that filled on? Now, I don't think maple really particularly needs it because it's not a very grainy process. But hey, in the order of let's do everything the same, we'll use it. Now this ash, without a doubt, ash is going to need a grain filler. Talk about an open pored wood. Ash is probably about as big as it gets, to be honest. So if you want a super slick shiny finish on ash, you better get good at grain filling, which is why I often use oils. And let's open the mahogany one. I'm expecting it to be a different colour. Woohoo! Very different colour. Right, that definitely looks like it needs a good stirring. Yep. Now I am going to let those dry for a little bit before putting the stain on there, or flipping it over and doing the filler on top of the stain on the other side, but we'll sort that out in a minute. There we go, all nice and dry, and they've come out really light actually, especially that mahogany. I'm really surprised at how light that's come back off. That's really good. Cool. Right, so before I put the dye on, I'm just going to whip it over with a little bit of 1200 just to flatten it and smooth it all out again, just to get rid of some of that little bit of excess on the top, and then we'll stick the dye onto that. Once that's dry, I'll flip it over and put the grain filler on top of the dye that we did first, and then we'll be able to compare the two. Good morning. So here we are, everything is fully dried. Now all I tend to do at that point is go over again with some 1200 and just wet sand really gently, just to get rid of some of that little excess residue that's on the top, and it should just make that colour pop back out again. So just a little dab of water, it doesn't need to be much. And that way, by the time we've gone over that, I'll then just wipe that with a cloth just to make sure all excess residue is gone. And then that will dry as our final finished thing before any lacquer goes on. So there we go, after a rub down and a bit of a wipe off, that is both sides done. So this one was colour first and then grain filler. That side was grain filler first, then colour. Now I think I prefer that one, because weirdly it actually emphasises the grain even more, which I would have thought you'd have gone the other way around, but there we go. I would personally go grain filler first. But again, the choice is yours. It does work. I suspect it's just all a little bit lighter colouring if you put the grain filler on after. But the proof is in the pudding, as they say, and now we get to bake that using the lacquer. So I'm going to give this both sides a nice spray over and see if that kind of enriches some of that colouring again. And there we have our final colourings. Now, if we have a look, all of them have come out with blue to a certain degree or another. This side is the this is the grain filler first and then colour on top. So we can see we've got a decent amount in the grooves. I'm absolutely loving that. Even the mahogany, there's a lot of the mahogany colour, but there's a definite blue inside there. The pine, the church pine, that looks really, really nice. I do like that. That's the bluest of blues, just the basswood. Right, so if we flip these over, is it actually any different? A little bit lighter. So what we've got now is the colour first and then the grain filler on top. Now you can see doing that, that grain filler definitely gives a lighter colour in the grain. Okay, there we go. So they still all look very nice, but there's so many different shades in there depending on what you've got initially. So what's been the purpose in all of this then? Well, realistically, because we tend to buy a colour for a project, but we've got to really make sure that we're thinking in terms of wood colour initially as well. So yes, those lighter colours like the maple being an absolute standard, you're going to get that truest colour, I would imagine, that you're probably looking for. But don't discount using things like a mahogany, the darker woods, and adding stain to them and adding dyes to them to actually see if it changes the look of the whole thing. So rather than just having plain mahogany, now you can have mahogany with a coloured graining in there. Play with things, experiment. Don't just take it on face value that the blue bottle is going to come out blue, because that base colour of the wood underneath is extremely important. Now, I'm going to take these colours over to the client that's after this next guitar. He can pick and choose whichever one he fancies. And then make sure that you subscribe, you like this video, and make sure you catch that next guitar in action. Until then, watch this video because I think you'll absolutely love it. And we'll see you soon. God bless. Take care.